Millions without power, deadly tornadoes, and homes torn apart. That is just some of the aftermath left behind by Hurricane Milton.
The storm has now moved off the east coast of Florida after making landfall on the Gulf Coast last night. Milton is still a powerful system that is now in the Atlantic.
And the daylight hours are providing a more clearer picture of just how destructive this storm was. This is a live look at Tampa Bay, one of the harder hit areas overnight. City leaders there are warning people to stay inside as it is not yet safe to travel. It's been a long night for millions of Floridians, and the recovery process will take even longer. We interrupt your regularly scheduled programming for a special morning edition of WUFT News. I'm Nicole Beltran.
And I'm Jada Ross. Our team here at WUFT News has been working round the clock to bring you updates on Milton, a historic storm that brought high storm surges, tornadoes, heavy rainfall, and powerful wind. Let's get to the very latest. More than 3 million customers are without power across the state, the most reported in the Tampa to Sarasota areas. In Marion County, leaders are telling neighbors to stay off the roads until noon today so that first responders and utility crews can work quickly. And in less than 30 minutes, Governor Ron DeSantis is expected to give an update on Milton's impacts to Florida and the state's path to recovery. We plan to bring that to press conference to you live right here.
Hurricane Milton made its way through Florida overnight, bringing powerful wind gusts and other severe weather. UF forecaster Matthew Clark joins us now with the weather. Matthew?
Yeah, it's been a long several hours for a lot of people. Millions have been impacted from Hurricane Milton. Moved its way offshore around 5 a.m. this morning. Still is a Category 1 with winds up to 85 miles per hour. Final track of Milton made its buzzsaw way through the Florida peninsula. Good news is it's going to tail off into the Atlantic south of Bermuda, unlike Helene, where it dumped dozens of inches of rain on the Carolinas. Live radar, most of the strong storm weather is off the Atlantic coast right now. A couple lingering showers on the first and Space Coast. Past 24-hour rainfall totals have amounted more than what was forecast. We got 2.5 inches here in Gainesville down to Tampa. They've seen just shy of 12 inches down there, just the swath of rain. There was torrential flooding and life-threatening floods last night. Those threats have subsided though. Wind gusts still tropical storm force winds on the Atlantic coast, seeing some 23-mile-per-hour wind gusts here in Gainesville for the most part. Campus Cam still cloudy outside. However, the rain has subsided. Winds are starting to die down as well. Temperature 66 degrees.
Thank you, Matthew. Millions are without power throughout the state of Florida as residents begin the road to recovery after Hurricane Milton.
Power outage reports have been pouring in since Milton made its way towards Florida, and those reports keep coming from as far north as Columbia County to Collier County in the south. Here you can see the millions of power outage reports across the state as customers across more than 20 providers are reporting thousands of outages.
As of earlier this morning, over 70,000 customers are out of power in Marion County, with Seco Energy and Duke Energy experiencing the largest outages. In Alachua County, around 5,000 power outages have been reported, with Clay Electric Co-op customers leading the charge. Seco Energy says they have a staging area in Sumterville, Florida, where crews are ready to provide aid. It's time to take a look at some of the damage closer to where the storm made landfall down south. WUFT's Juan Chaoui is live in the studio with an update on the hurricane damage in Tampa.
Tampa is about 67 miles away from Siesta Key, around where Hurricane Milton made landfall last night. This morning, the mayor of Tampa gave an update on the state of the city. Footage taken from Tampa shows destruction, heavy rain, and flooding, the dangerous recipe that leaves over 500,000 residents without power. The mayor of Tampa, Jane Castor, held a press conference earlier this morning where she discussed this and urged residents to stay inside.
Please stay inside. Stay inside until we can get out there with our teams. They are all in action right now.
She said experts are now out assessing the full scope of damage. The mayor also mentioned that there are some areas first responders still cannot get to due to flooding, and the city is doing everything it can to make these locations accessible as soon as possible. Live from the studio, Juan Chaoui, WUFT News.
Thank you, JC. No one was hurt after a crane came crashing down into a building in St. Petersburg as Hurricane Milton moved through Florida overnight. The crane collapsed into a neighboring building on Central Avenue, and more buildings faced damages during Milton. Tropicana Field, home of the Tampa Bay Rays, suffered roof damage from the storm's strong winds. The St. Petersburg ballpark had plans to host 10,000 first responders and local emergency crews, but ultimately it was not used as a shelter during the storm. St. Pete also responded to a water main break, causing a city-wide shutoff of drinkable water services Thursday at midnight. The city is issuing a boil water notice for all drinking water until further notice. The city supplies drinking water to Hillsborough County, Pasco County, Pinellas County, Newport Richey, and Tampa.
Hurricane Milton's heavy rains put significant pressure on the wastewater system in Marion County. Conditions are expected to worsen throughout the night. Your help is needed. You're asked to conserve for the next 48 hours to prevent sewer overflows and protect the wastewater system. You're encouraged to avoid laundry, limit showers, and flush toilets only when necessary until 5 o'clock Friday evening. Officials say every drop you save helps keep the waterways system healthy during this critical time. Even before fully coming ashore, Milton triggered more than 24 tornadoes, with reports of multiple deaths in St. Lucie County. WUFT's Alexis Vivanco continues our team coverage live in the studio with the area's recovery efforts that are already underway.
The search for survivors is underway after one tornado tore through a mobile home retirement community in St. Lucie County, killing several people. Wellington and Fort Pierce are two other areas that saw the threat of tornadoes. FDOT cameras were on scene to pick up one of the tornadoes that were in Fort Pierce. Debris was thrown out throughout the entire area and even tipped over semi-trucks. Houses were torn to shreds in Fort Myers that led many people displaced. Downed power lines and uprooted trees are blocking neighboring areas. In Cocoa Beach, buildings and other structures destroyed from the inside out. And finally, Port St. Lucie, devastated by a trail of destruction. It is still unclear what the full extent of the damage was caused by tornadoes, but many have been left waiting for answers. From Florida Emergency Services, live in the studio, Alexis Vivanco, WFT News.
Siesta Key received the full force of Hurricane Milton when it made landfall there last night. WUFT's Bernardo Montas joins us with the latest on conditions in Siesta Key and Sarasota County.
Sarasota County faced Hurricane Milton head-on Wednesday night. After a hard-fought battle, the county didn't walk away unharmed. Power outages and flash floods continued to batter the area. FDOT footage captured a part of Hurricane Milton's strength. Flooding submerged roads and caused power outages. FPL's power tracker also reported 230,000 homes in the county without power. Video shows trees struggling to resist hurricane-force winds too. Sarasota County resident Debbie Weber said she was still fearful of the storm within her shelter.
And then there's just kind of like an ominous feel because we've lost all power here, except for the emergency lights in the hallway.
We saw as much as 9 inches of rainfall. Siesta Key, Milton's landing spot, saw as much as 5.5. Downed power lines and trees continued to litter roadways, leaving some unusable. In the meantime, Sarasota County Sheriff's Office is urging residents to stay indoors. Live in the studio, Bernardo Montas, WUFT News.
Florida Fish and Wildlife is jumping into action to help those affected by Hurricane Milton. FWC says its officers are among the first responders to enter an area after a major hurricane. Teams have been staging high water vehicles, airboats, and other equipment to jump into action to address damages and flooding in the wake of the major storm. Coming up, ongoing search and rescue efforts, how the federal government is responding to Hurricane Milton.
And Orlando officials make efforts to get the city back on track. More updates on first responders and the Orlando airport coming up next. It could take weeks to get the lights back on for millions of Floridians after Milton's destruction overnight. And the tornadoes that hit before Milton arrived was just the start of the dangers ahead. As Alice Barr reports, the federal government said they will be swift with their response to get neighbors back on their feet.
Hurricane Milton churning across Florida after coming ashore last night as a Category 3 storm near Siesta Key off Sarasota. Milton's power unleashing dangerous storm surge and flash flooding and spawning a deadly tornado outbreak.
This is a devastating tornado. It took out that 10,000 square foot red iron building.
Ahead of landfall, FEMA put 1,200 search and rescue workers in place to respond.
This also includes 30 high water vehicles, helicopters, as well as boats to be able to go in and support the counties and the states as needed.
Also on the ground, crews ready to restore power and distribute millions of meals and liters of water as federal responders braced for a potentially once-in-a-century storm.
To the people of Florida and all the impacted states, we've got your back.
President Biden urging storm victims to avoid swirling misinformation and seek the help they need. Members of Miami Fire Rescue's Florida Task Force 2 among the crews looking for survivors.
The first couple of days is full blitz for all the task forces. It's 24 hours of operation, trying to find those that are left behind, trying to find those that are stuck.
Many who fled the path of destruction already dealing with damage from Hurricane Helene.
I think it's just cumulative, it's just you start to fall out and you get pretty overwhelmed.
Now they wait to see what's left.
City of Ocala leaders are urging neighbors to stay off the roadways this morning. They want utility crews and first responders to be able to restore power and assist the community as quickly as possible. Officials say now that it's light outside, you may be curious to see the aftermath happening around you, but they are asking you to beware of potential hazards like downed power lines, fallen trees, and limbs. They say avoid getting close and trying to take pictures and videos of these hazards. Leaders are asking you to stay off the roads until at least noon today to give those crews ample time to work.
Orlando police and fire crews are back on the road after sheltering during the worst of the storm. WUFT's Alex Land is live in the studio with how these agencies are serving Orange County.
Orlando police and fire departments left people without aid for almost 3 hours during the brunt of the storm because of dangerous winds. Now they're braving the storm damage to help the community. Orlando police are answering service calls to help residents navigate storm damage. Orlando saw almost 9 inches of rain while Milton passed through the state. Patrol officers are transporting people through floodwaters to safe shelters.
We start assessing the damage to Orange County, assessing our power outages, assessing potential flooding, and the loss of water. We are prepared.
The city advises residents to shelter in place if they can and only call 911 in cases of emergency. For less urgent reports like downed trees, you can call the Citizen Info line at 407-246-HELP. And the Orlando International Airport has now ceased flights for over 24 hours. MCO shut down Wednesday due to risk of flooding. Operations will resume once airport officials deem flight conditions safe. The airport asked that if you can contact your airline directly for updates on your flight. Live in the studio, Alex Land, WUFT News.
Still Hurricane Milton in the western Atlantic. I will have the latest on the updated track and more coming up after the break.
You're watching WUFT-TV News.
Neighbors in Volusia County and along Florida's Space Coast are still seeing impacts from Milton as it heads out of the state. WUFT's Jack Meyer joins us in the studio. Jack, you've been taking a deeper dive into what neighbors are experiencing.
Even though they may have been on the back end of Hurricane Milton's trek through Florida, Volusia County and Daytona Beach were no exceptions to the wide-ranging impact of the storm. More than 150,000 county residents have lost power in the last 12 hours in what looks to be a long road to recovery going forward. Take a look at this video right here that shows just how severe the conditions were across the county as Milton ravaged through the area. Volusia was hit with its worst stretch of weather late Wednesday night going into Thursday morning, facing winds of approximately 50 to 60 miles per hour alongside gusts of up to 75 miles per hour. The real issue, however, proved to be with the rain, as the area received roughly 10 to 15 inches of rainfall over the past 24 hours. Volusia is also still currently on a flash flood warning with estimated surges of 3 to 5 feet affecting the county since the storm made landfall. County officials had implemented a curfew that was in place until 8 a.m. this morning, ending just less than an hour ago. With the sun now out and Milton barreling away from Florida's coast, county officials are set to begin recovery efforts as the day goes on. Reporting live in the studio, Jack Meyer, WUFT News. Now let's head on over to UF forecaster Matthew Clark, who has more on how Milton has impacted Florida as a whole.
Yeah, it's been a long several hours for millions impacted from Hurricane Milton. The good news is it has moved its way off into the Atlantic, still as a Category 1 storm with winds up to 85 miles per hour before eventually tailing off into the Atlantic south of Bermuda. So if there's any good news there, it tails off into the Atlantic, unlike Helene, which went up to the Carolinas and hit them with dozens of inches of rain. Infrared satellite, very disorganized storm right now. The center of circulation is just off the coast of Cape Canaveral with those winds at 85 miles per hour. Not a lot of rain on live radar as well, mostly wind at this point in time impacting parts of Jacksonville from the First Coast down through the Space Coast into Daytona Beach. Futurecast has this storm just tailing off into the Atlantic Ocean. We could have a couple passing showers through Jacksonville, Daytona Beach this afternoon as the storm continues to make its way off into the Atlantic Ocean, and here in Gainesville could have a couple straggling showers as well. Rainfall totals, all of these numbers are more than what was originally forecasted. We were forecasted about an inch here in Gainesville. We got 2.5 inches from Milton, near 5 inches in Ocala and Marion County, almost 12 inches in Tampa. You can see just the swath of rain that went through. Flash flooding threats remained for most parts of the night. Those have now subsided. Storm surge has also subsided. Siesta Key, where it made landfall last night at 8:30, saw probably the most storm surge from this storm. And going over to the east coast of the storm, because the storm is just off the coast in the Atlantic, still have a lot of wind and rain pushing all this water into Jacksonville, Palm Coast, Daytona Beach, and into the St. Johns River. It's not a good situation there. Disorganized storm, here's the dry air that we've been talking about. It expanded the wind field of Milton. It's only 219 miles in diameter north of the Yucatan Peninsula, but doubled in size as it made its way into Florida because of that. From Miami to Tallahassee, they all saw tropical storm force wind gusts at least at some point in the past 24 hours. Wind gusts right now, center of the storm just off the coast of Cape Canaveral, 65 mile per hour wind gusts in Daytona Beach still, 50 mile per hour winds in St. Augustine. Still possibly seeing some tropical storm force winds here in Gainesville. These are just wind gusts, so not sustained winds. Power outage totals have continued to ramp themselves up. Hillsborough and Pinellas County each with 410,000 people without power, and you can just see the path that it took, leaving a mark. We did get spared here in Alachua, only 6,000 residents without power. South and Marion County, 68,000. Overcast clouds right now overlooking our campus cam, 65 degrees. So it is feeling a little nice out. We have sustained winds around 11 miles per hour, 24-hour rain total just under 2 inches up to this point. Moving into the rest of the week, though, we do have a nice weekend ahead if there is any good news, but it's all about recovery efforts at this time. If it doesn't seem right, no waiting and flooding water, driving and flooding water. Stay away from those down power lines. If it does not seem right, don't do it. Stay safe. The worst has been past.
Up ahead, we continue to bring you more on Hurricane Milton damages, what Fort Myers has experienced overnight as they combated this major storm when we return. Fort Myers was heavily affected by Hurricane Milton, bringing destruction in its path.
WUFT's Emilio Boutros joins us with an update on recent condition in the area.
The scene in Fort Myers was alarming as Hurricane Milton swept through the state. Milton made landfall just 70 miles north of Fort Myers. The storm brought devastating effects as Fort Myers would receive around 8 to 12 feet of storm surge and wind gusts of around 60 miles per hour. Fort Myers streets are flooded, debris forcing people to stay indoors. Following the destruction brought by Milton, Lee County released a statement warning residents, a point of emphasis, stay off the roads due to roadways with downed trees, power lines, standing water, and other hazards. Officials warn to avoid driving through flooded waters as your vehicle can lose control. They also say emergency crews are assessing damage and beginning to clear roads. Lee County government and local fire rescue departments will provide welfare checks to help out-of-area people. Email your storm checks to welfarestormchecks@leegov.com with the name, address, and phone number of the person you need to check on. Live in the studio, Emilio Boutros, WFT News.
If you come across any fallen trees or power lines, Marion County Sheriff's Office is asking you to report them. Contact their citizens information line listed on your screen to report any of these damages. And if you have any power outages, refer to the Marion County Sheriff's Office Facebook page for more contacts. In Levy County, trees and wires are down. Officials are asking you to stay indoors and give them time to clean out the roads. And all county offices will be closed today from the impacts caused by Milton.
In St. John's and St. Augustine, neighbors are seeing nearly 5 feet of flooding. WUFT's Kade Sowers is live in the studio with storm safety warning from officials. Kade.
St. Johns County is experiencing severe flooding as water rapidly spills into the streets of St. Augustine. On the south side of State Road 206 in St. Augustine, 5 feet of flooding has been reported. Flooding from the St. Johns and Matanzas River have covered city streets. Deputies urge those in St. Johns County not to walk or drive through flooded roads as levels are still on the rise. Footage shows intense wind gusts with water pouring over the seawall at the Castillo de San Marcos. St. Johns County Fire Rescue reminds citizens to remain inside to allow first responders to evaluate and clean up damages. Live in the studio, Kade Sowers, WUFT News.
Thank you, Kade. And as we wrap up this newscast, we can see that there has been significant damage across multiple counties in the state of Florida.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been really lucky here in Alachua County, but we're sending our thoughts out to everyone who's suffering at the moment. And before we go, one last check on the weather.
Yeah, we really dodged a bullet here in Alachua County and Gainesville with the track staying well south of us, almost paralleling the I-4 corridor. Still a Category 1 hurricane in the western Atlantic basin before eventually moving off as a tropical depression south of Bermuda. We've seen widespread power outage totals across the state with 420,000 in Hillsborough and Pinellas County. I'm from Pasco County. They've seen 170,000 without power there, only 4,500 here. Seeing a swath of rain totals across the peninsula of the state, nearly 12 inches of rain in Tampa. Again, that's right where I'm from. They saw just over 12 inches in Pasco County. We've had more rain here, reaching over 2 inches, getting around 2.5. That's more than was originally forecasted. Orlando saw 10 inches of rain as well. There were flash flood alerts all throughout the night just because of how much rain was dumped from Milton in just a matter of the short few hours. Heading into this weekend, though, we have nicer weather ahead. That is some of the good things of when a hurricane passes. It does usually bring nicer weather as we head into this weekend. Lows in the 60s and upper 50s.
In a matter of minutes, Governor Ron DeSantis will give an update on the latest information and recovery efforts from Milton. Once that happens, we'll bring it to you live. We'll be right back.